You got my own microphone right here. Provide meals. I'm especially fascinated by the meals that are served in the poorest part of Washington, D.C., but also providing meals to elderly communities and so on throughout, needy communities throughout the DMV area. It's a tremendous project. And the web address is what?
servemeal.kitchen.org.
Servemealkitchen.org. Real simple. Please go there and donate. Much as you can. Thank you, Imam.
So can we have like video? If each one of you is going to give 15 minutes, then we open.
You have the microphone, so how many can start?
Yeah.
We have
Yeah, he also has the microphone, so we.
that one?
Yeah.
I don't know that I need 15 minutes to say anything.
Maximum of the
I think what's critical for us really is the diet. So if you pose a question, we can.
We get to that.
We can get to that.
Yes.
So fabulous.
Go ahead, no. Go ahead, give us a little bit of background. Not everybody know who you are or who you think. But please give us a few words about who you are. And the topic we chose to discuss today is reconciliation through our holy books.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah.
We need the microphone so we can.
Johari, Abdulmalik.
Imam Johari.
I have the privilege of having a microphone that came with my suit. So with that, to say that I grew up an Episcopalian in Brooklyn, New York. I sang in the choir. Just knew that I had a lot of access to the inner workings of our church. And I recall when I was in confirmation class, this is the age in which a young person in the Episcopal Church learns the tenets of the faith to embrace them for themselves in the way, as Muslims we would say, that when a child reaches puberty, this is when they are responsible for their actions. In the Episcopal Church, the way of passing over that threshold is to become confirmed. So there are classes. As I was in the confirmation class, our priest asked the question, let's go through the 10 commandments. Who knows the first commandment? So I raised my hand, acknowledging that in the Old Testament, God is saying that your God is a jealous God and refuses to have any God worship other than Him. The priest says, oh, that's a great answer. I said, follow up. The priest said, so what is it? I said, Father, if it says that there's only one God, why do we have three? Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Many years later, people would say, he could have given me a better answer. So far, I haven't heard a convincing answer that explains to me the Trinity. So I said to him, I'm not satisfied with your answer that it's 3 in 1. But let's go to the next commandment. I raise my hand again. Thou shalt not make to thyself any graven image of the likeness of anything that is in the earth or on the earth and in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down to them, nor worship them. Is a good answer. I'm getting ready to be confirmed. Father, I'll follow the question. Father? I said, why do we worship the images? Because when I come to the choir room, you have to go past a lot of different altars to get to the choir room. Not just the main one, but then there are some small ones along the way. And he said, well, we are not worshiping the statues that we see. We're using the iconography to guide our worship to God. And I had a follow-up question. Really statement. I said, Father, we may not be worshiping this statue, but according to what I memorized, thou shalt not bow down nor worship. So I may not be worshiping, but I'm definitely bowing down. He turned red as a beet. And I felt as precocious as a 13-year-old Jesus talking to the scribes and the Pharisees saying, you know what? You guys have the truth, but you don't really understand the meaning of these words. You're just regurgitating whatever people said, but you're not thinking, because the word said, thou shalt not bow down nor worship. From that point on, I became a person. I'm listening to the Old Testament and the New Testament until finally I would reach the stage where from the New Testament, they're saying that Jesus said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And I go, okay, well, if Jesus is God, you should be saying, oh me, oh my, what have I done to myself? From that I began looking and saying, if the New Testament is describing that Jesus says there will come one after me and will bring you into all truth and who will bring a law, I'm looking for that one. And that one, we believe, came in the person of Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. Now let me back up on the reconciliation.
Oh, I'm glad you remember it's about the reconciliation.
Yes, sir. Because what is really central to this, as a Muslim, we're identifying that there is only one God. And there's only one message sent through many messengers. And where we differ from interpolation, from translation, from religious conferences like the Conference of Nicaea to decide which of the Gospels will become canonic.
Canonized.
Right? And which ones will not.
Okay.
The apocryphal, the doubtful ones. But looking to say that the Quran is the red letter. Now I can compare my background in graduate school of genetics. So if you want to see the relationship between organisms, look at the DNA. And where you find what we call sequence homology, then you see these things are related to each other going all the way back. And so when I look at the sequence homology from the Quran, from the writings of Paul and others in the New Testament, what is presented from the Old Testament, when I see the sequence homology, I can say between the Quran and that's the God's honest truth. And you may find it in the Bhagavad Gita. You may find it in other writings of Buddha. I can't say that Buddha was a prophet, but I can say if I see that sequence homology, I know that that's the Word of God. And so maybe for us to get past some of our other differences, some might call it when we work together and in the IFC, look at the golden rule. And if those principles apply, then we can all agree with those. And on the areas where we differ, God will sort those out between us when we meet. The question is, because I grew up in church, faith without works is dead. The Quran describes, Inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. People who they have a connection with Allah, and they follow it with the deeds that are consistent, that flow out of them. And that is our challenge today, rather than arguing about which way you hold your hand or which way you face when you pray. All of us are commanded to feed the hungry. Right? The
religion.
No people have been left. No religion said leave the hungry people to themselves. Ta'amal miskin, the language of the Quran. So there's no doubt about it. This is the command. And so while we're talking about issues of reconciliation, it's clear that the objectives of all of the guidance. I remember when people were talking about the Old Testament and the New Testament, Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law, not to break it. The issue is, are you following the spirit of the law, or are you stuck on the letter of the law? If you're stuck on the letter, then you leave the man in the ditch on the road to Jericho, because you say it's the Sabbath. Or is the higher calling that there's someone in the ditch, and Dr. King said, not only do we have to rescue the person who's been abused on the highway. You don't know the Bible, I'm sorry. You'll read about it later. That person is in the ditch. It's not enough just to say, I'm going to work on the Sabbath, but I need to fix the road to Jericho because people are being robbed every day.
You said them more about the guy in the ditch, because it's a very tiny example you gave.
And with that, I want to turn it over to me. The brother Safi to talk about the man in the ditch on the road to Jericho.
Actually, Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu wa ba'd. The man of the dish is related to me, actually. Yes. When one of those Pharisees, the Salafi of the time of Jesus,
today or the original
the Salafis of the time of today.
Really clear. I call them pseudo Salafi.
Well, here you go. Came and wanted to, like, he's a smart aleck, asking Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Remember, Jesus, throughout his teaching, didn't teach anything that's outside the Torah. But he tried to explain what the Torah. They told you and I'm telling you. He's explaining.
Yes.
Not one word was outside what God revealed before him to Moses and to the other prophets. So, Lord, Master, or whatever he told him, what is the greatest commandment? The greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and all your strength. Is this original to Jesus? It's not. It is from the Torah. And the second one, like it, Jesus said, to love your neighbor like yourself. And on these two, he said, it's built all the law and prophets. In other words, all teachings. And I personally love Jesus very much and respect him tremendously. If he says on these two, he's built all the laws and the prophets, I believe they encompass everything. Remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about loving God with all your heart, mind, soul, and all your strength. And to love your neighbor like you love yourself. Then that same smart aleck Pharisee. Yes, but who is my neighbor? Like he's acting like he doesn't understand what Jesus is talking about. Who is my neighbor? Then Jesus told them the story of the Good Samaritan. If Jesus was here today, probably he would be talking to his Jewish people about the story of the Good Palestinian. It's the same story, basically, of someone, of a group of people disliked by the majority, by a lot of the Jews. One time I said by the Jews, they said, oh, we're going to generalize. I'm not going to generalize anymore because I don't like generalization. Samaritans usually beliefs slightly different from the Jews of that time. So they were disliked. They believed the temple should have been built on a different mountain, Mount Gerizim, than where it was built. Anyway, they were disliked. So the Jews that are listening to Jesus consider the Samaritans heretics or disbelievers or whatever. So when Jesus proceeded to tell that smart aleck about the story of the good Palestinian, or the good Samaritan, he knew what he was talking about. The story in simple terms is like this. This Jewish guy was traveling to Jericho, and some people attacked him, robbed him. He had cuts and wounds and all of this, and took away his clothes and threw him in a ditch. So looking at him, you cannot tell what religion he is, or whether he is part of your tribe or the other tribe or somebody else's tribe. But he's a human being. That's the key. He's a human being. So a rabbi went by, he looked at him and decided not to bother. I'm not sure. Was it a Saturday? I don't think.
It was Saturday. It was a Saturday. It was the Sabbath.
It was a Sabbath. So he decided he doesn't want to do anything on the Sabbath. Where I grew up in Beirut, I don't mind cutting the story. I'll tell you something interesting. My dad's store used to be in the Jewish area of Beirut. So I grew up with Jews. I knew, and I still know, and I know more today, what Jews learn. It's not something strange to them. At the beginning of the Sabbath, the rabbi used to come to the store, take me by the hand, and take me to the synagogue so I can turn the light for them. Because they're not allowed to turn the light on the Sabbath. Okay? So that rabbi looked at the ditch, didn't like what he sees, and didn't want to desecrate the Sabbath. Desecrate the Sabbath. Do something against the Sabbath. I kept walking. Again, I'm going to stop and mention something that Jesus said to those Jews. The Sabbath was created for you, and you were not created for the Sabbath. In the eyes of your Creator, you're more important than the Sabbath, than this earth, than the Kaaba, and everything you see around you. You're more important. And your dignity, we taught in Islam by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our dignity is in the eyes of Allah higher than the dignity of the Kaaba. So if a Muslim is caught by the enemies, and the enemies are there in Mecca, and they say, either we destroy the Kaaba or we're going to kill these guys, Muslim will choose to destroy the Kaaba, because the life of that human being is more important in the eyes of Allah than the Kaaba, which is the first house built on earth for the sole purpose of worshiping Allah. That's why we honor it, because it's the first, we call it a house. You all know that it's just a room, cube. I've been inside. I know what it looks like from the inside. It's there. It's one room. MashaAllah. Congratulations.
We don't usually tell people this.
The first time that happened, didn't make it, and I cried. And I prayed that one day I'll make it. So alhamdulillah.
So you can testify something.
Yes. Because it was the first place built solely to worship Allah or to worship God, we honor it as Muslims. Not out of fanatism, not because it belongs to Muslim and nobody else. It belongs actually to anyone who honors their creators. So anyway, so you are more important than the Sabbath.
Yes.
You're more important than the Kaaba. You're the most important creature Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created on this planet. So Jesus' opinion was the Sabbath was created for you. You're not created for the Sabbath. To save life, you can do all of this. But that rabbi didn't do it. Several other people went by and looked and didn't do it either. But when that Samaritan, who also honors that, saw the guy in the ditch, tried to take care of him, checked him out, didn't ask him, what's your religion? Just took care of him and carried him and took him to the inn and gave the innkeeper money. See, remind you, people on that road are travelers. They're going to a destination, they're going somewhere. No one is just jogging on that road leisurely. The people are traveling. They're about some serious business they want to accomplish. So he trusted the innkeeper with the man, take care of him, he gave him some money, and he said, on my way back, I'll check with you. If we still owe you money, we'll give you some more. Just take care of this man. This is the story told by Jesus about the man in the ditch. Okay? I thought it's important enough that I should share with you. And do I still have time?
Yes.
Let me know when my time is up.
3 minutes.
Today, I had a meeting with some people I meet for the first time at Shirley Gate Mosque. A class. It had some youngsters and some older people. And they were actually trying to figure out whether to stay together or to separate into two classes. And the guy who's in charge of that class brought me to talk to them so we can take a look at what we're doing and decide whether we are compatible with what I'm saying and what they looking for. Okay? And I like that very much. Usually, I don't like to lecture. I don't like monologues. I like dialogues. So when I'm talking to some people, I'd like to get some feedback. And usually, I'm talking about a topic, but I'm learning also from the people who are listening, not just lecturing. So usually, if there is a title for all my talks, whether on Facebook, on YouTube, or whether here or anywhere else, will be like a discussion for change. And I intend to use the word discussion, I mean it. A discussion for change. Because a change should result from any time we sit down to talk. Some change should happen. If nothing happened, that means it was useless, waste of time. And I like to start, when we talk about the reconciliation, I like to put emphasis on what brings us together. And remember, guys, today we are supposed to have a rabbi with us also. So the Imam replaced the rabbi.
Is that how it happens?
Same difference.
Because the rabbi.
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, which makes me about Jewish.
Yes, yes. And I was actually, I'm a Muslim, and my heritage goes deep down into Judaism. And I mean that. I'm not saying it, to sound smart. I love Jews. I don't mind saying that. You might not like it, up to you. But I love Jews. And I always read their Torah with respect, because God doesn't change his mind. If God told him something, I'm sure he told the same thing for us in the Quran. And this, some restrictions. I'll talk about it. This book is the Quran with the references to the Bible. If we didn't have a lot of commonalities, I wouldn't have found 3,500 verses that have the same meaning in both the Bible and the Quran. So we have a lot of commonalities. Okay, so what is the most important commonalities we have? Well, Jews pray 3 times a day, and they repeat this prayer I'm going to repeat to you. And I'm going to say it in Hebrew. The prayer called Shema means listen or hear, and it's God talking to Jacob, Israel, Jacob. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, Jacob, Adonai, God, our Lord, God is uniquely singular. Not one, uniquely singular. Ahad. One time I was talking about this to a group of people. I think, Andre, you were there that day. We had 3 rabbis sitting there. And when I said uniquely singular, translating the prayer, one of them stood up and, oh my God, I say it 3 times a day. And I know this is what it means, but I always thought it's saying one. It's not saying one. It's that Ahad is not Wahid. Wahid is one. Ahad is uniquely singular. Actually, it's singular. Why do I say, we'll get to that. Comes later. Uniquely singular, because its singularity is not like any other singularity. Why? Because we're describing God with it. When it comes to God, He said about Himself in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There is nothing like Him. So whether any time we try to describe God, say uniquely this, or uniquely that, or that's unique in that sense, because there is nothing like Him. Don't say anything that allow people to imagine. He's not an old man in one of the benches painting, or like the paintings at the roof of the, chapel. Yes. He's unlike anything we can imagine. If we can imagine anything, it will not be God. Anything you imagine is not God. So if you, the way to talk about Him is to talk in terms that warning us about not trying to imagine, because He's not like us. He's our Creator, but not like us. He thinks, but we don't know how. He walks, but we don't know how. He listens to all of us without having ears. I don't know how, but I know He does it. And He's going to, He wrote that we will all die one day. We will be resurrected, and we will go to a day of judgment. And He also promised, and His promises I take for granted. I don't doubt of it. He promised that if you believe that He is your Creator, and He's the only one worthy of being worshipped, then you're going to end eternally with Him. And if you don't, it's your choice, then you will not be. So this is one is heaven, the other is hell. Thank you very much. I'll start here.
Before we start, we're going to have a 10 minutes tea break. Tea is right here.
This is like the Sabbath, huh?
This is just
We're supposed to talk?
after tea, we'll have more.
Please, everybody.
By the way, this is, let me plug my book. This is my Quran translation, and every translation is the translator's understanding of the Quran. No one can say, I have the Quran translated. I have my understanding of the Quran translated into English. This took 6 years to produce. This is the second edition. That means the first edition sold entirely. And it's available if you like to buy it. You can buy it on Amazon, by the way. But if you like to buy it from me, I'll sign it for you. Okay? And that makes it...
And
that's the second book I have. It's the Quran with the references to the Bible. Anytime I found a verse in the Bible with a similar meaning to a verse in the Quran, I added it here as a reference. I have a third book, Out of Respect to Our Jewish Neighbors, called the Quran with the references to the Tanakh. The Jews don't call their book, the Bible. They call it the Tanakh. The Tanakh is an acronym of 3 letters. The T is for Torah, the N for Nabiyyin, prophets, and the K for Kutubin, books. So the 3 letters are the acronym of Tanakh. Tanakh is what they call their book. By the way, the number of books included in the Tanakh is not the same as the number of books included in the Bible, in the Christian Bible. But the Christian Bible has a lot of what is in the Tanakh. The Bible is based on the Tanakh. So anybody that wants to buy one is available. And they're $3 each. Half of that will go as a donation to charity. Like
Want some
I
cheese?
saw today at Shirley Gate, $15, the book is $30. 15 goes to the mosque, 15 goes to me, so I can reprint it and read it.
If I may,
In his turn.
if I may,
You may.
thank you.
I'm Jew.
Just say.
Your video is still on?
Yes.
Yeah, it's still on.
I'm
Good. Is it still on?
Yes.
Still on. Because no, if somebody calls you something, and sometimes it knocks it out.
I don't know.
Since we're talking about this issue, the big issue for us is reconciliation. One that helps fight the punch for you. Anybody here have any thoughts about reconciliation that you'd like us to address? We're not gonna answer it now, we're just gonna hear your thing. Yes?
So two things in my mind about the reconciliation or the similarities between the three religions. The first one is the mother tongue between Arabic and Hebrew and the Aramaic. Because in my limited knowledge that the Arabic and the Hebrews are twin languages. So yeah,
Twin is too close.
Okay,
Okay, good.
I think the Hebrew is actually extracted from the Arabic.
No, it's all,
So-
one is
So
the beef,
the
one is the
tongue,
chicken
which
and
is
fish.
extremely important because each letter and each word will have its way in the meaning and in the confirmation
Very
of,
true.
or like in the construction of our brains
Very
and
true.
our
Very
minds. So the second thing is we all share one thing. The creation, the body, the soul, and the spirit. So how they are related in each religion, like what is the body mean in Islam, what is the body mean in Judaism and Christianity, and the soul and the spirit. So that these three components, how they relate to each other in these religions.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll think about it.
Yes, I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then we'll give you an
Food for thought.
continue or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Any other,
You heard this, food for thought.
let's have real food. Any other,
Any other question?
as it relates to this issue of reconciliation?
Mine is not so esoteric. Why do
Those are
you,
always the most esoteric ones.
We know you.
why do you need reconciliation? And what is reconciliation to each of you?
Oh, wow, that's really the most, that's a very.
It's actually her question.
Please do.
So your time of comment is over. We're going live.
Well, let me know when you're ready, so I can start.
He's ready.
The first thing I would like to do.
We are we're live.
The first thing I would like to do is say how my heart goes out to that 13-year-old boy in Brooklyn. Many of us in the Christian faith have faced the same questions. We've wrestled with them. There's been division within Christianity right now about what we call the earlier paradigm, which it sounds like you were raised in, and I was raised in. What we call the emerging paradigm, which is a more modern 21st century perspective on Christianity. There's one God. And Jesus, we believe, was the best manifestation of that God. Muslims will object to that, but that's the belief now. And the most important thing we need to remember about Christianity, as far as I'm concerned, is that Jesus fought passionately for compassion, for justice, and for peace. And I think those are the three things. If you take anything away about Christianity today, I would like you to take those three things. That's what Jesus really fought for. That's why he was executed, because of his passion for justice, fighting against the domination systems of his time, the Roman Empire and the elite the nobles, the aristocrats of the Jewish society. They were the ones who put him to death. So, in my own search, to deal with questions you were dealing with as a young man, didn't really begin until 6-7 years ago. I'm a developmental psychologist, and one of the great things that I learned is how to ask logical questions, to think critically about things, including religion. It makes a great combination, the scientific background and the religious background. What it led me to in about 2017, we had a new administration here in the United States, and one of the first things that administration put out was this proposal to ban immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim countries.
Muslim ban.
I decided to protest in some way. I began to attend the class at the Johari Mosque. One of the things that the Imam was telling me, I was struck by the similarities between Islam and Christianity. The same struggles the people in the Johari Mosque were dealing with were the same struggles that we in our church, Good Shepherd in the United Methodist Church in Vienna, were struggling with. One of the things the Imam said to me that made sense was, the Muslims need to know their religion well enough to explain it to their children. I really didn't know my religion well enough to explain it to my children. So that really began a more recent exploration that led to what we call progressive Christianity, a much more, like I said, 21st century historical research approach to Christianity. But the basic thing is that my views on Christianity are somewhat different than many people in my church. And the way we deal with this is the idea that you guys are talking about, the idea that faith is dead without works, the idea that we are very unified as Christians in our emphasis on following Jesus, acting like Jesus, doing what Jesus did, which is works, which is good works, which is working for compassion, working for justice, working for peace. We are very diverse in our views. Many people have not worked out the issues of the Trinity, of many other aspects of it. And so the idea is, and it gets back to what you were talking about, the ability to talk openly about things that we differ. And in this case, we're talking about differences in the paradigm of Christianity and a more recent emerging paradigm of Christianity. We can extend that farther to the idea of talking about Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and Christianity. We can talk about what unites us as human beings is our humanity, and our work to be the same. To all be working for justice, for peace, for compassion to the poor, the widows, and those people who are less well off. So when we're talking about reconciliation, we begin really with this idea that we're unified in our humanity and in our attempts to make humanity work for everybody. We are very diversified in our beliefs, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, Christian, what have you. So the most important thing here is our common humanity and what really unites us. If we're talking about reconciliation, first thing we really need to do is respect everyone, every individual for who they are. This is one of the great things that Jesus really promoted, in that he ate with sinners, tax collectors, lepers, poor. Everybody was invited. He was extremely inclusive, and that was contrary to the customs of the time. The society was divided by different classes and different castes, and you did not eat with people who are of a different group. You did not associate with people of different social group. Jesus basically invited everybody in. And that's why meals are so important in what we're doing here, sharing food, sharing tea and so forth. It's really what unites everybody from different classes. So those were the basic things that I would get across. First of all, reconciliation begins with understanding and respecting every individual. And we are very diversified, very different in our beliefs. That's secondary to honoring and respecting our humanity.
Here I want to go in with you. With McIntosh. Everybody can hear me?
Yes,
You can say that. I like being microphone free.
okay.
Me too. When you start talking about concepts, and I have modest degree of knee-jerk reaction, that without guidance, the Quran says people can be either the khairul bariyah, they can be the best creatures, or they can be the sharrul bariyah,
The worst.
this is, thank you for the translation, that we need guidance in order for us to extract out of this body what you are describing as humanity. I recall in these United States where enslaved Africans were considered by the Constitution as 3/5 of a human being. So they're human, but they're not as human as everybody else. No, they're not human. Right? Because the question is humanity. And so there really needs to be for us some guidance, some collective acceptance of what humanity means. Because without it, one can begin to say, well, blacks are not as human as white people. Latinos they're a little more than blacks, but not as much. Or women. In the early theology of the church in America, the question was, do women really have a soul?
Exactly.
Right? So we need to accept a consensus that what does it mean to be human? It's the sister's point, right? And if that is the case, then what should we derive toward the existence of human beings? The beauty of our discussion when we're talking about reconciliation, everything that I can say that Jesus said is an example of what the Prophet ﷺ said. If you take the life of one person, it would be as if you were slain all of humanity. That's Old Testament, right? It is also the Quran, right? That the idea that the Prophet ﷺ's example is the way, the truth, and the life, just like every other. So for us, and I'm saying this to everybody who's here and listening, how do we take this sense of what humanity is to talk to some of our neighbors who really are functioning below the standard of what it means to be a human being? Well, that we have people who are living in our society, and I think we talked about this before we started. Populism, I think you called it.
I didn't use that word, but you're right. You're actually right.
This attitude that, okay, white supremacists, but false white supremacists. It's a fallacy, right? I mean, even to say white supremacy assumes that maybe there is such a thing as white supremacy. There is no such thing, right? But the fallacy of white supremacy is rooted in the last 2 centuries. Right? How do we, as people of faith, whatever faith tradition, how do we address that? And by the way, we're sitting here, the fact that we invited our Jewish neighbor, I mean, we almost shouldn't even have a dialogue without them, because one of the critical issues of today, I'm gonna say this, how can we be living in a world today and watch every day on television children, women, old people killed wantonly every single day, and the news says the weapons are coming from our country every day? It's like watching the Holocaust happen live. And we listen to our so-called leaders and ask the question, what have they been drinking? And why? I mean, even as a society, how can we go to work every day? And on the way to work, on the way to school, you just see dead babies every day. You want reconciliation. We have to do something.
What would you recommend?
My God. I know that if I were a Dr. King, I would say we need to shut it down. We need to shut it down. I mean, we got boycotts. It's having an impact, right? We're pushing for sanctions. It's having some impact. Our prayers and our fasting, but also really, really, really holding our government officials accountable.
Very important.
Right? I mean, but we have strange things happening. We're talking about these values, and a person who talks about this at university, they're about to lose their job. Mm-hmm. If you're a doctor in a hospital and you start saying, I'm seeing the lack of humanity against my fellow human, you'll lose your job. You're anti-Semitic. Yeah. So whatever righteous indignation we have and whatever we can do, we need to be doing. But I'm saying to live in an era where we watch every day a genocide against the people who live in our holy land. Muslims, Christians, Jews. It's not acceptable for humanity. It's not. And if we don't feel uncomfortable,
we're sick.
Something's wrong.
Yes.
Like some of us, I know how we medicate. Turn TV off. How many people you talk to that I'm not watching TV? Like you're a 3-year-old, if you close your eyes, you're invisible.
Yes. They don't want to be bothered.
We have to do everything that we can possibly do. Because I'm telling you, I have many Jewish allies who have told us they came for the socialists and I wasn't a socialist. And they came for the communists and I wasn't a communist. And I was a labor organizer and they came for them, I wasn't one of them. It goes all the way down the list until it says, then they came for me and there was nobody left. If this can happen in Gaza, there is absolutely no reason why it can't happen.
The question begins then, what shall then we do? What can we possibly do? At our church, what we've started is, we're a white church. We're a predominantly white congregation. We're living in a predominantly white neighborhood.
Come on.
And so we said, well, how can we reach out and become more multicultural, more intercultural? So we identified 6 populations that we want to identify, that we want to contact with. And in our geographical area, we reached out to the Native Americans. We reached out to our local Baptist church, African American church there. We have connections with them now. We've reached out to the Muslim community. This is why we ended up connected here. We reached out to the Jewish community, which is why I tried to invite Rabbi Barakieh here. We reached out to the Asian community because it's the largest minority community in our area. And we reached out to the Hispanic community because it's also one of the larger ones. So these are trying to work out in those areas. In terms of following Jesus' ideas about compassion, we have an outreach group to participate in various community service projects. We just organized a social justice action group to take some kind of political action. 2 weeks ago, several of them went down to Richmond to lobby at the General Assembly. Some of us are going down next Thursday on behalf of our church to lobby. There are various actions such as trying to reduce gun violence, trying to work for more affordable housing. There's a variety of things that we're working on. So the idea is we're trying to do something. And I would encourage everybody, wherever you are, to try to do something. there's lots we can do, as you described here, as you suggested. Do something. Don't just sit still. Don't just sit and talk about it. Get out and do something.
The statement says, to sin by silence when one should protest, make cowards of men.
Amen. There's not much I can add
Come on.
to what these two very learned gentlemen said.
Come on.
I can though answer Andrew's question about what do we mean by reconciliation. Because reconciliation can mean many different things. What I meant by reconciliation when I chose it as a topic for this is basically the commonalities we have. Reconciliation means, to me, that if I see that we are heading to the same direction, although you want to be on the right of the road and I want to be on the left, that's okay. Maybe we both can walk in the middle and get there. We're going to the same place, you know? Or maybe you stay on the right and watch for me and I'll stay on the left and I'll watch for you. But find commonalities and build on them. I'm living here among neighbors that have various religions around me. Either I isolate myself and call myself a tribe, and only members of my tribe can go through the wall I built around me, or I want to tear the walls down and try unashamedly to emulate my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and present him as an example to my neighbors through my behavior. So I want to be the change I'm talking about.
Come on.
Being the change, other people will notice you. Or you can continue to hide yourself. Regardless how good you are, nobody will see it.
No, actually, the propaganda will say you're the enemy, you're a terrorist.
Here you go. Yes, absolutely.
You keep quiet,
A Muslim nowadays, it has the same meaning as a terrorist. You know, and in my own mind, let me put it in a contemporary meaning. The countries who voted in the last few hours to stop the UNRWA funding, feeding the Palestinian people in general, are the real terrorists. Are the real terrorists. You know, so all this is, none of this we're saying is carved in stone. We're talking about the context we understand, the way we see things and understand them. And all this is open to discussions. The days where Muslims used to come, sit down, and a scholar lecture them about what Islam is, in my mind, should be gone forever. Whatever I tell you is suspect. Whatever I tell you need to be checked by you. And if you don't do your job and check it, if you just repeat like a parrot what I'm telling you, you're worthless. We don't need you. My wife keeps hearing me talking about critical thinking for children. How we need to teach our children critical thinking. She said, what do you mean? I said, if my grandson come today here and said, Jiddo, his grandfather, we learned today in school that God created us and created this universe, and I'm very happy about that. I wouldn't celebrate with him. I'll ask him a question. Why did you believe this? So I usually talk about this in every meeting I go to. So my wife heard it hundreds of times. So the other day, my grandson came to visit us from Riyadh. His dad and his mother live in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And his name is Karim. So my wife wanted to practice my theory about critical thinking. She said, Karim, do you believe in God? He said, yes, Teta. Teta means grandmother. She said, why do you believe in God? He gave her a question in my mind that nailed it. He said, Teta, look around you. Everything you see around you is a testimony of God's existence. That's why I believe in God. He's 8 years old. I felt so happy when I heard that. I felt so blessed. I felt extremely fortunate to have my grandson saying this, because I'm always worried. I go and talk. I have 23,000 people following me on Facebook, and I try to play a teacher every day by having something new said. But all that makes me feel guilty on one dimension. Why am I guilty? Am I able to influence my children and my grandchildren in the way I like to influence others, in the way I see others are getting influenced? And if I'm not, what am I doing? الأقربون أولى بالمعروف. The closest people to you are worthier of the good that you are spreading. So, hearing this from my grandson made me feel comfortable, at least one. So this book is dedicated to my grandchildren. And it is written in a high school English, American English. And it's been edited by several American people, because I didn't want the one reading the Quran translation to be trying in their mind to be wondering, why did he say this way and not that way? This is not said correctly. No, we did thorough work, making sure the focus is on the meaning of what the Quranic verses are saying. And the reason it took so many years, because like I told you at the beginning, you translate for half an hour and you pray for like 6 hours. Because if the Imam gives me a text to translate for him, I translate it, it takes me a few minutes, and I go back to it. Is this what you meant to say? He look at it and he say yes or no, and it's done, finished. I don't go back to it. I finished this in 2015, I still go back to it every day, and I keep enhancing it every day, because it is a trust, it's an amana delivered to me. And one day I have to stand up and justify why I translated in a certain way. This is why, before people start reading the translation, I advise them to read the methodology. Last July 1st and 2nd, the organization I started called the International Quran Research Association, acronym IQRA, held its first global conference.
Which means read.
Yes. Held its first conference. The first conference was about Quran translation. We identified the translators, we looked for them, found where they live, contacting them. We found like 52 living Quran translated into English. We were able to get 40 plus of them to participate in our conference. There is one thing in common. None of them has a methodology spelled out at the beginning of this translation. Because my background as a strategist and a business consultant, I'm trained never to present a project without presenting my assumptions at the beginning. Why did I translate this verse this way and not that way? Because I have an assumption. Give you one of my assumptions. One of my assumptions is that Quranic Arabic is not the same Arabic that was spoken by the Arabs at the time the Quran was revealed. It's much higher. It's much higher because the writer of this book is much more educated than all of them put together. He's their creator. So it's natural, logical that his Arabic will be a much higher Arabic. That's one assumption. You can agree with it or disagree, up to you. Then the second assumption was Quranic Arabic has no synonyms. No synonyms. Because the author does not need to use synonyms. If he wants to say, in English for instance, there is one word father is your father, whether he gave birth to you or whether he adopted you. He's still called father. Quranic Arabic, they're two words. And they're totally different, and they tell you specifically what Allah meant to tell you. Ab is the one who raised you, and Walid is the one who gave you the biological father. So when Allah is talking here, He's talking about Bir al-Walidain, not al-Abawain. Bir al-Walidain, to be the kindest possible to your parents. Parents mean biological parents. In the Quran. This is one level. That doesn't mean be nasty to the parents who adopted you, but your parents, biological parents, come right after God. In everything in this Quran, you glorify God and your parents. Gee, Allah is telling me my job on earth is to glorify Him and to be the kindest possible to my parents, as if they are one after the other. Okay, so there are specifics, assumptions on my part that I use and I spelled out. So if you, another assumption, the Quran has no chit-chat in it. If you think that God said something just to fill a gap, it's your misunderstanding. Go back and read it again. It's an assumption. You might agree, you might disagree. But in my case, this is what I believe, and I wrote it down, so you would know. For instance, God is talking about fasting. 7 plus 3 or 10, complete 10. He's not teaching us addition here. There's various systems at that time of calculation. One of them is a dozen system, for instance. But he's telling us this system, 10 system, is the best that you should adopt. There is a message there. We have to see, working with the Quran require thinking. I'll tell you what, we have time.
I mean, yeah, you can, but we
I want
have a lot of questions.
Before we go on, I just want to dovetail, not piggyback. After, because Andrew's here,
Yes.
after more than 35 years of work with the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington, people used to think that if Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, Zoroastrians, Baha'i, Latter-day Saints, if we all started working together, the thought was that out of that thing would come some new religion called interfaith religion. What we learned after more than 35 years is what happens is that as we begin to interact with one another, for the most part, a person who is of another tradition becomes more deeply investigative of their tradition than they were before.
Yes, that's my experience too.
When we look at the person who would become known as Francis of Assisi, visits during the 7th Crusade, visits the Sultan Al-Qadr, and when he goes back and begins telling Christians that they can pray to God directly the way Muslims do. They don't need an intercession,
Yes.
right? And we should pray more often, multiple times a day. This came out of the interaction.
Yes.
He didn't say, I'm going to go back and become Muslim.
Yes.
He said, I'm going to look into my own tradition.
Yes.
You experience people say, well, fine, if Muslims are fasting, don't we have fasting? And maybe we should go deeper than giving up chocolate for Lent. Because we need to have something more meaningful in our fasting tradition. And so that is for people who are afraid of this engagement, that what we know for almost now 4 decades, this kind of engagement, this qasas, sharpens the blade of the other sword.
Yes.
The other is probably the opposite. There's a fear around the issue of us being integrated because some white people are afraid that if we integrate, there won't be any more white people. Everybody will be brown.
You all cover.
They'll all be mocha babies.
I like
And
that.
I'm saying in the same way that that's a false fear.
Yes.
That there are people who like Scandinavian looking women, and they're not just gonna go for J-Lo just because, you know, she's J-Lo. That fear that people will give up their identity if we start working together. And by the way, I believe that this genetic fear is counted. The idea that we'll lose our whiteness is why there has to be segregation. And we'll lose our Christianness if we hang around Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and Sikhs. And it's not. I believe that it's a false fear that the Prophet ﷺ has informed us, as Dr. King reminds us, that God's not going to judge us by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. And Allah is not going to judge us based on these individual characteristics, but who has the best relationship, bir and taqwa, relationship with their Creator.
To him and to us.
Well, by the way, I think of the cross like that. You've got the vertical axis between between me and you,
Yes.
personally with God, and your horizontal axis.
Yes.
By the way, the sign of the cross, is older than Christianity. It's a universal principle. It's talking about this vertical and horizontal relationship. To love God and to do good with your fellow human beings. But you wanted to open up, y'all been sitting here, we talked about dialogue a long time, all we did was monologue.
Okay, let's take a question.
There's already had a
two points I still want to make, but go ahead.
I just wanted to make one comment
Yes,
about my previous question. So actually, when you
So we
spoke,
tried to touch you.
okay, so when you spoke about the tragedy in the world, like the war and the conflicts, and it's not only in Palestine, but it's
Many
everywhere.
Congo, Sudan.
Sudan is worse than Gaza today, but
Yes,
nobody talks about it.
and many genocides and many. So my entire career and studies is in conflict and all of that. So, but all this brought me to the point of the original story of the creation of Adam and Satan. The main point or the pledge that Satan pledged to do is to destroy mankind. And how he can, and that's why we need to understand what is the body, what makes us a human, what is the soul, and what's the spirit. This is not just an esoteric, abstract concept. These are literal. These are biological. If we understand that our bodies are the tools, and we have the soul that is connected directly to God, and the spirit is the energy that is coming directly from God to make this body operates, then the competition is between the soul that is good soul and the evil that's trying to control this body. So when we are controlled by the evil, it means we are controlled by our egos and our shadows. So the shadows
That's your
are
answer.
not
Right
absent.
there, you just answered yourself.
She's preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So
Good.
you don't mind me just.
No, go ahead.
So this body, when it's controlled by this evil shadow, it will be the soldier and the right-hand tool for Satan himself.
Yes.
So then Satan will create the army to fight
Yes.
goodness and to fight God, because that's what he wanted. And if the soul, the good soul, if it's awake and takes control of the body, then the biology of the body will control the ego, will control the evilness. What happens is that we make conscious decisions. We know where is light and where is dark. And the dark and light, they are identical, except there is a very fine line. So I think Satan created a copy in every single thing that we see around us. Satan created a copy of what God already created. In order to diverge us from the path into his path without even us knowing, because we are already hypnotized by the evil and the dark energy. So what we see around us from all that destruction is because we are on autopilot, because we are controlled and not making conscious decisions, and we think, oh, I'm just in myself, I don't know, I'm powerless. In the reality, we are all Superman. We are, and that's why Satan came. Because that's why Satan was so jealous of Adam. Adam is much more powerful and stronger and more intellectual than Satan itself. So Satan becomes second him. And that creation of Adam with that capability, that God himself did not allocate the angels to create Adam. No, God said he created Adam by himself with his hands. And the version of Adam is the upgraded version of the mankind. So that version has the ultimate power, and that version, when it's totally full of light, it will be qualified to inherit earth for the other life.
And next time we meet, where is the brother? Suhail. Next time, I want to talk about 10 ayahs from Surah Al-Baqarah that talk about the creation of Adam. 10 ayahs, because they cover all that, and I see that we're using words arbitrarily, because I don't know what's the, exactly. I know that in the Quran, Allah so we all share. Ruh is translated as spirit. If that's what you mean, because we need to define that term. If we don't define the term, we'll be confused about the meaning.
Nafs. It's not
Exactly. Do you mean soul by nafs?
Nafs is soul, ruh is spirit.
Okay.
Because the spirit is the Holy Spirit. The spirit can carry the light of God. That's why the Holy Spirit carries the words of God.
Actually, we'll talk about it next week. I'm not going. Once we start talking about this, we cannot just say a few words and stop. This is really a topic that can take at least an hour. I studied that topic, I put a lot of time into it, I wrote about it, and I did videos about it. Those 10 ayahs, because they're packed with meaning.
Oh, and we left out Qalb. This is another one.
The what?
Qalb. No. She left these terms. These terms
need to be defined, and we need to talk about why the Quran used them, and what do they mean in our daily life. Again, please, if you want to come next week, or not next month. Next time. Read those 10 ayahs in Surah Al-Baqarah about the creation of Adam. There are 10 ayahs. And the meaning in them is so fantastic. Traditionally, the traditional commentators of the Quran, Mufassirin, scratch the surface only. For instance, why did God ask the angels to bow down to Adam? For instance. So we need to talk about this. Who was Adam? You just gave your opinion on that. Who was Adam? Why was he created? Why was he specifically mentioned? So all this we will answer next time, inshallah, if we're alive.